I won't give any signals after 1 minute and after 6. Otherwise, let's just check if everyone's here. Do we have OG?
Yeah.
Great. OO?
OO here, sir.
CG?
Yes.
We're here.
And CO?
CO is here.
Okay, fantastic. So I guess that without any further ado, I'd like to invite the Prime Minister to begin this debate. Here.
Just making sure everyone can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah, here.
All right. So 3, 2, 1. We think this debate is very clear. The question is, does in modern time online communication allow us to further our legitimization to tell people around us? If beforehand we could tell only the nearer environment about actions happening because of people that are near us, when now someone from countries away or maybe from the other edge of the country does something to me, can I tell to other people from the other edge of the country? We will have 3 points on that matter. First point, we'll discuss about how this will create a safer society for everyone. Basically, less people harassed, we think, is generally a good thing and therefore legitimate. Second thing we think we'll have here is that we will tell why it's okay to further like the lines in which I share information. If before I could tell only to my close friends, why now it is fine to tell to the whole online community. And last, we will have a point about why it is the responsibility of the person harassing someone to know that they might be liable for, you know, like the consequences of their action, and therefore it is legitimate as well. Now, as for the definition, we think it's pretty clear. Harassment could be sexual harassment, could be threatening, anything such as that. And we think generally it will be mostly shared in the relevant communities, meaning if I'm like part of a forum or part of a Facebook group in which that person is also a member and this is how we know each other, I will probably publish it there. But in general, we don't mind them publishing it in whatever public forum they think is relevant. So before that, any clarification? I'll take that as a no, and I will continue. Now, so basically what we have in our first point is that this will create a safer environment. How come? Let us understand, first of all, why is it so bad that people have harassment? We understand that sexual harassments are bad because we see it as an infringement and like desecration of people's autonomy, of them feeling unsafe, of them feeling less like humans, and someone else is, you know, putting power over them. And we know that society in general sees that as something very bad, meaning that if someone would expose themselves on the street, generally if someone will see that, they will be arrested by the police. But the problem is that modern times don't allow us actually to fulfill the same law. How come? We see that basically today, either the people don't trust enough to report such a seemingly minor thing. They think the police will not take them seriously and therefore don't report in the first place. They fear maybe public ridicule. They fear that maybe they will go through the whole process and get nothing in the end, and therefore they don't go in the first place. And second is that a lot of times, even if they did go on with the procedure, there is lack of interest. Literally, the case falls because of lack of interest in the country. It's merely someone sending a dick pic, etc. And basically, we have no retaliation and no punishment. Now, we see that and once there is no punishment, we see that even though society doesn't see it as a good thing, doesn't see it as a legitimate thing, nothing really deters people from actually committing this again and again. And we think basically today, if you do this, you basically put another step into making it a better society for everyone and therefore legitimate. How come? First of all, we need to understand that this is very similar to the Me Too movement. Women beforehand did not feel safe enough to report how they were harassed. And the mere act of telling other people, this is the person doing it to me, it is legitimate to say their name out loud. It's legitimate to ask them to be responsible for their action. It is legitimate not to be simply the person receiving, but actually taking ownership of this action and you know, asking for retribution. This is something which is legitimate, and it will soon, Oleh. And this will actually encourage other people to report it as well. And the second thing is that we think that basically the people today do it mainly because they think they can get away without any retribution, without feeling that they are punished in any way. There is no reason for them to stop doing it. Oleh, yes, please.
Thank you, sir. Don't you think that the most terrifying thing for the participants of Me Too movement, for example, from someone from unstable countries, is for their identities to be revealed for all the haters?
Right. So we think in the end it is legitimate if it's your choice, meaning if you choose to tell everyone someone harassed me, it is your choice, and you can choose whether to reveal your own identity or not. We think if someone thinks that their own identity could be put at risk, but they prefer, putting themselves at risk and at least risks the other person, so it is definitely legitimate. If I understood correctly your POI, so this is my answer. Now, so basically we can see that we will create a safer society, a society with less harassments. We think all in all, this is a very legitimate thing to do. Now, second thing is that we think it is okay to share, and I'm moving now to my second point, we think it is okay to share to a larger group of people now that the whole world is kind of like this very small village. How come? Let's understand, first of all, that already today it was legitimate for me to tell to other close friends in my close society about things that other close friends did. Let's say before the internet, someone would harass me in a party, someone would maybe grope me, someone would, tell me something like verbally sexually harass me. So I could go to my friend and I could tell her, listen, that guy did me this and that. And the reason because of that is, first of all, is mainly because that person knows that their action is could be told to other people. You understand that we are part of the same circle. Noor will go further on that about that knowledge of what circles this could be told on. And second, we think is that because I am basically serving the protection of other members of the community. I could tell Sheila, my friend, that someone groped me because now she will know to stay away from that person. Now she will know that she doesn't need to talk with him. Maybe she will even decide to, to block her from her life physically, not to be in the same parties as that person, not to invite him to her own parties, etc., etc., etc. This idea is basically saying that we tell this information because this is crucial information for the people around ourselves to protect themselves. Basically, what happens is that we tell them what happened in our own version of them. They ask themselves, do they believe it and to what extent, and then make their own informed decisions about how to protect themselves accordingly. They could also ask that other person their own story, etc., etc. But the idea is, in the end, because this is the relevant community, I am telling them that because it is their means of defending themselves from something that otherwise they would not know. Sharing information is a basic thing in every society in order to protect yourself. Why is this relevant in online era? Basically, the thing here is very, very simple. If beforehand, that person in the party before the internet could probably only harass people in our close environment, and the people that could retaliate could probably be the close environment only, meaning if we did not invite him to parties, he will have a very hard time finding other parties to go to. Now, that with online life, this is not the case. Now, a person from the other edge of the country can harass me online, and I could not make the friends around him to retaliate, and I cannot tell the friends around him that they should protect themselves. We think that in online environment, basically we have extended, with extending our reach, we have also extended our responsibility and the people that we should give information to in order for them to defend themselves. If we are saying that, basically I can announce it in every relevant form that will allow them to make an informed decision. Because of that, I beg you to propose. Thank you.
Okay, I thank the Prime Minister, and I'd like to invite the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, everyone. Can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. We're thanking the Prime Minister for his fine speech. And in our speech of the opening opposition, we will fight for the same value of people feeling protected and having a safe space to speak on the sensible matters. But while the opening government speaks for the interests of single individuals, we will speak for the whole society. So, for the opening government to have their case protected, they have to prove several things. First of them, there are no other alternatives to have their benefit protected. Speaking of the alternatives, opening government says that there is no enough interest in the society. Like if you go to the policeman, they will not protect you. First, we argue that and we doubt that because we understand that if there is a legal protection in the country, it's not up to the discretion of the police officers to decide whether they want to protect or not, because that constitutes an offense on their side. So they have to do that. If you want to protect people in that way, it is absolutely possible. Number two, opening government absolutely doesn't consider any cases of the society protection or the service protection. What examples I'm speaking about? If someone is harassing the other person, the harasser can easily be banned from the society. The account would be locked, for example, and the individual will never have an access to the society. We believe for most of the individuals who are engaged in this communication, it would be an efficient mechanism to stop this from happening. We will go on from the opening government with given a characterization, but before that, the structure of our case. First, we will tell you what cases we are speaking about because characterization is extremely lacking in this debate. Number two, we will show you that cases when you consider that the other person is guilty are very subjective and they can be like misjudged. Number three, we will show that the harm that the individuals will get as a result of revealing of their identity is absolutely unproportionate. And finally, we will show you that a danger, a chance of your individuality to be revealed will stop other person from participating in these societies and this communication, which will lead to they losing safe spaces and just spaces to communicate and speak of. What cases we are speaking about, first of all? Yes, we are speaking about the Me Too movement because we understand that like the women which are participating in that, they first they do not feel comfortable to reveal their like vulnerable cases. Number two, we understand that they might live in very conservative society and they don't want their identity to be revealed. We're also speaking about like LGBT websites of like finding a partner, and we understand that this is very unsafe matter. We're speaking about the cases of the opposition communication in countries like Russia. We're speaking about Alcoholic Anonymous. We're speaking about religious like Telegram channels in Iran, etc., etc. And yes, we also speak about Tinder when you want your identity to not be revealed. What characterization is very necessary for our case? First, we understand that no one knows your true identity here. Well, because like reveal an identity means that no one knows it. And we understand that it's not about Facebook groups with fakes. Why? Because Facebook currently bans fakes. We understand that currently it is forbidden to expose your identity both under the rules of these platforms and under the law on privacy. We understand that we speak about the cases when the one individual has revealed his true identity to the other person. So he has put his trust on the table. He has revealed his vulnerability. He has like delivered some sensitive data to the other person. Yes, Nadav, please.
Are you challenging our definition?
Well, I would love to hear your definition again, but once again, we believe that it is absolutely up to the motion that like revealing the identity is about the cases when identity is not revealed. So it's better for you to have your definition under the motion. So let's continue. We believe that these cases are extremely subjective and up to the like determination of the individual. Why? First of all, we understand that we are speaking about very sensitive matters because LGBT issues, the movement of the Me Too, like the opposition issues, the religion matters, they all consider matters which are very dependent on the context and on the background of these individuals. And they are likely not to be on the same page on these matters. Why? First, because they're controversial. Two, because these are likely to be people from the different backgrounds and different scenarios and different like geography, etc. And for the other matters, we understand that like if these are sensitive communication like Tinder, that it can easily be like one person being angry on other person, two people being emotional, etc., etc. We understand that online communication may be vague and people might have simply misunderstanding. So what we are proving to you is there is a huge scope for subjectivization in the decision on revealing the personality. If the opening government is speaking about like a friend even revealing this identity, we understand that it's not only the victim which can really like reveal the true identity, but the friends of the victim. We understand that they cannot be the judge in this case. The next point in our case is proving that it harms people a lot. We understand that if we are speaking about like a lady which is fighting in the Me Too movement in some like conservative country, we understand that if her identity would be revealed, and it is so easy if the identity is revealed in the community, to this identity to go to haters, to go to like the people from the like different platform, different opinion, etc., etc., they get this information even in status quo sometimes. We understand that like this woman will have a big suffering of the people bullying her at the street. And first, she will less likely be in, protecting her views, which are she doing right now. Number two, her life will be in danger, or her health, etc. If we're speaking about the oppositions in Russia, if we're speaking about like the Alcoholic Anonymous, we understand that it's not just like they are a danger in their life or etc., but they are no longer able to practice their movement and to be in this movement because they do not feel safe. The final point in our case is that it does not consider only the individuals who are the bullies, let's say. It's all the other individuals. Why? Because you understand that if your like mate who is feeling like, who is very subjective, or who can be emotional, or you can be drunk, or you can be in different contexts, that if in any case of mistake, your identity will be revealed, you will match the risk and you will think that, no, I'm not doing that because the chance of the risk is too high. Thank you.
I thank the leader of the opposition, and now we continue with the Deputy Prime Minister.
Sorry, just 1 second, putting my timer. All right, ready. Okay, so let's give a little framing of what kind of cases we're talking about, and then I will give some rebuttal to OO and then move on to my next. So we are mainly talking about a public platform where with people's identities, where someone privately does something to me, and the question of whether I can reveal what they've done to me with their identity or not. What OO is talking about, sure, can be defined under our case, but they are very, very limited, because the case where someone in the LGBT community would harass another person in the LGBT community, having their identities revealed, like they would reveal their identity to the other person and then harass them, is very, very small. Usually in Tinder, you do not reveal your identity until like you have a very a good communication with that person, if you're really that afraid. But secondly, we think these cases are very small. But secondly, in order for me to reveal somebody's identity and be believable, so that people would believe that they truly are this person, I would most likely have to reveal my identity as well. Which means that if two LGBT people that are like are not out of the closet, and one of them wants to say that the other person harassed them, they would have to reveal their identity as well, which means that they believe that the harassment is so extreme that it's worse than them revealing their identity. We think in that case, it is okay for them to reveal the other person's identity if they feel so harassed. Thirdly, you're talking about societies which they should be very, very safe societies, which some people could enter these societies and use the privacy of this society, use the fact that there are a lot of secrets in this society exactly to do that, exactly to harass people. We see a lot of times like men going on women platforms with their identity not exposed so that they could harass them. We see a lot of time people entering LGBTQ communities without them being LGBTQ just to harass the people. We think these cases happen a lot, and they are so good at this because they use the fact that these communities are so secretive. We think in that case, regaining your power means taking this out, means talking to people about it, means revealing what's happened to you. And in order for you to be able to regain your power and take your own story and give it out, you need to take the other person's story too, and you need to reveal them. So we think these cases will happen very few times, and we think in that case it would be right to do so. It would be legitimate. Now they tell you that in a lot of cases the community could take out that person, they could be blocked, he could be banned from the community, and so on. And now and he tells us it's not fair because these things are very, very subjective. We think exactly because these things are sometimes could be subjective, when I reveal my story, people get to decide on it however they want. People get to see whether it is harassment or not harassment, and then the community gets to decide what kind of limits does the community want for itself. They tell you you can use the police, but then they give you exactly types of cases where you cannot use the police. If we're talking about LGBT communities in places where the police does not protect LGBT communities, if we're talking about the opposition, where in places where you cannot talk to the police, we think these communities should be able to decide for themselves what's harassment and what's not, what kind of protection they want for their own people. And exactly for that case, once you reveal these things, the community itself decides on that and can protect you or decide it wasn't harassment. So they tell you, we need to show you in a minute, they tell you we need to show you that there aren't alternatives. We do not need to show you that there aren't alternatives. This is not like a law or a mechanism or anything. This is just the fact of what is legitimate for people to do with their own experiences, with their own stories. And the fact is, all we need to tell you that it is legitimate, that it is my right to tell my story. We think this is very important, and even if it is subjective, and we think, first of all, obviously the person has to believe that they're harassed. That is in the motion. Once I believe I'm harassed, of course, I will not always have to. I will not always have to like tell my story. When I tell my story, it means I believe that I am very much harassed. No, usually people who harass you, either if we're talking about men who sexually harass women, if we're talking about people who extort you with private information, if we're talking about like bullying or school bullying or whatever, these people depend on the fact that you're scared and you're not going to tell other people, that you're scared and you could only tell your friend or mother or your very small circles. They depend on the fact on that because they use this privacy, and that's exactly how they gain their power. Second half, I would love to hear CO. I would love to hear you if you have an extension. So we think exactly because of that, what you need to do is you need to take the story out to the public, first of all, on regaining that power, on taking away the power of the secrecy from the person who's using this harassment against you, and revealing it for yourself and owning up this story and not giving them the power, but also to try and protect the other people in that community. Yes, CO.
If your main aim is to create more safe space by creating some laws or some other stuff, why it's legit, assuming that you still can publish your story by not mentioning the name of the harassers, why it's legitimate to explicitly say who was the harasser or not, if you still have an opportunity to raise the issue on sexual harassment?
Right, yeah, of course. So first of all, because we think he did it, and when people do things, they have to be responsible for the things they do. That will be in a minute in my point. But secondly, because that's part of the story, that's part of the pain. Sometimes the person's identity, sometimes the person's identity is very important to my pain. If my boss harasses me, it's very different than from if some kid I don't know harasses me, which is much less, it feels much less because I don't know them, because I could just take it away. When my boss harasses me and when someone in my family harasses me, it's very different. And we think that's part of my pain, that's part of my story. And I do have the right and the legitimacy to do it, but also I do have the right and the legitimacy to try and prevent them from doing it again to other people. We think that's the main power of people who were under harassment, of them feeling that they're trying to protect and help other people. But then we think people are just responsible for the things they do. Even when I tell a friend a secret, I know this friend can take out my secret. That's part of the things I decide for myself, whether I'm willing to take that chance or not. We think especially this is true online, because we know a lot of times online things are portrayed and people see what happens online and they see that there is a revelation of things that happen online, and so they know. We think people know these things can be revealed, and for that they are responsible for what they do. For all these reasons, OG.
Okay, I thank the Deputy Prime Minister, and now we continue with the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Hello, do you hear me well?
Yeah, can you hear you?
I'd like to ask you to ask POIs only with the chat and to write the position who is asking POI. Everything else I will not notice, and I'd like you not to turn on your mics because it will lead to some problems with my connection. All right, so
do you want us to write the POI itself, or just
no, just
okay.
say the POI and then you can ask it not to interfere with the speech. All right. So the basic point, which is brought to us by the opening government, is that every person within the internet has a right for self-defense. And the opening government do believes that this right of self-defense can be experienced through the revealing of the identities of those people who you deem to be responsible for different harassments. Not necessarily being the victim, that's not in the motion, but deem that someone commits a crime. Think that it is so, but not necessary have all the facts that whether you understand that this person is responsible or not. We do believe that the self-defense in the basic status quo is a good thing when a person has to self-defend itself. But why do not we always allow a person to self-defend themselves from different crimes? For example, why don't we allow a victim, after the victim was attempted murder, to kill the person who has been attempting this murder a day or a week after that murder were attempted, knowing that this person have committed a possible harm against those victims? Because we do believe that self-defense have some problems without harms which can be dealt to the harasser himself, because it might be unproportional, B, to the society as a whole. Therefore, the basic principle of self-defense, which works in the majority of scenarios, does not apply to the cases when you have an identity of a person who have committed, for example, a crime of a harassment. Let's call it a crime, right, in my speech. Because in that case, not willing to report the crime to police or to other legislative structures, we will do it by the knowledge of the law, is not a legitimate reason to create your own justice against that person. Basically, it's not the game about the efficiency, it is the game about the legitimacy. And even if killing a person would efficiently stop another person from committing a murder, we do not believe that it is legitimate to do so if we have another set of law within the society. Therefore, we have to understand that there are huge differences between the police and the current legitimate system of legislation, and between the person who is revealing a person online. The difference is that when you go and you say that this person has harassed me, here are the proofs, please take him to the court, we do believe that the personal effects, the fact that the person would be scared and the reveal to mass media if this person is really guilty will be the equivalent of creating fear of all those harassers who are willing to do so. And basically, this is not the motion about the results. It is about the means by which we are getting to the results. Because you could either go to police, or you could either go and publish that basically the person who is now under the fake account of some other person is that guy. People, come on, destroy him yourself. About the problems which they do create to them. First of all, we do believe that by doing so, the cause and the reason that people are doing that are in order to create safe places, in order to be able to consult with one another more, to be safe to speak without any harassment. But what are the problems with that? First of all, when you do the facts of revealing themselves within the online community, regardless of whom you do reveal, increase the chance and the understanding that anyone can be revealed. When this understanding comes to motions, the people within those safe places, when you go through the means of online revealing, decrease the efficiency of safe places. Second of all, we do believe that when everybody can reveal, the power of harassments within online themselves increases, because when you perceive the harasser as online person who will never find you or will never understand where you do actually live, where you do actually work, when you commit the act of online revealing, you increase the power of harassment, because if you reveal the harasser might as well know your personal data, and all the threats of rape, harassment, attitude will have a much bigger impact on you as a person. Second of all, we do believe that it basically undermines the value of safe places, because all other people who are not being included in the direct conflict will now understand that there is a chance that if there will be some harassment against their problems, that by disclosing a person who is the harasser, you are likely also to lead to the disclosure of the harassed one. For example, the woman who has been raped would like to talk about it, and that she was harassed by a person who is laughing at her. The problem with that is that by doing so, you are more likely to destroy the safe places. Therefore, you basically delegitimize the idea because you are doing this to make the places safer. But by that, you are doing this place less safe. Before I continue, closing.
It is very hard to find one who arrests. He can easily delete the messages and close his account. So this is why it is legitimate, because there's no way back for the harasser after you reveal his identity.
The problem with this POI, that is basically a mechanistical one, right? We do believe that there are ways to have the evidences. We do believe that you can have different cookies on different websites, which can be traced. For some reason, the opposition people in Russia are being sentenced to 5 to 10 years only for reposting some part of use. And we do believe that in the majority of countries like China, United States of America, European Union, there is enough technology to trace them. This is basically the mechanistical rebuttal. If you do agree that it would work, you already agree on our turf that it is better to do that way, therefore that it is not legitimate to do in the way the government proposes. Second of all, there are two other problems with limiting harms in their case. First of all, if they deem that someone is responsible, he might be innocent and that might have misinterpreted what was happening to him or to another person. Therefore, innocent person might suffer. Second of all, it might be disproportional because we do believe that if we do so, we take this person as guilty and we are trying to include the social pressure on this person. This person can lose a job. This person can lose family. This person can lose ability to find a decent work because somebody has posted. The problem is that even if this person have really committed that crime, the responsibility might be unproportional. And the unproportional responsibility means two things. First of all, it means that it is basically unjust when you steal something to cut your head off, right? Because it is does not compare, and the only thing that can compare it is the court. And second of all, we do believe that the person afterwards will not have the sense of justice and will be more likely to make some acts of revenge in order to restitute justice to the moreover. So basically, we're asking you the question: who would you like to be judged by? The angry community of angry people or by court? In order for something to be legitimate, you have to be judged by the police and the court. Therefore, we're very proud to oppose.
I thank the deputy leader of the opposition, and now we continue with the bottom half. First, I'd like to invite the member of government.
Can you hear me right now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Just a second. Okay, I'm starting right now. So I'll give it a little bit of framing, then I'll move on to rebut what we've heard from opposition, and then I'll move on to my case. So let's understand what we're actually talking about here. So we have to understand that harassment is a very wide problem right now on the internet, and it's not getting any treatment. This will be explained in my point. However, it's very serious because it can cause a lot of harm to people, such as, make them depressed or even in some extreme cases commit suicide, whether if they're being harassed to a very extreme degree. Now, we're not necessarily talking about like private harassment in some people's like DMs or whatever. We also are talking about cases which are the big majority in which revealing someone's identity means actually exposing who is the person behind the harassment, who is the anonymous identity, who is committing this harassment, which is very hard for us to find right now, and we don't actually have any mechanisms to find this right now. Okay, so these are the things that we're going to be talking about. Now I'm going to move on to rebut what we've heard so far from opposition. So first of all, they tell us, look, there are alternatives. We can get these people's account locked. They can get banned from the communities and all of these things. So I have a couple of responses to this. First of all, because mind you, because this is online, there are always ways to create more accounts, to stay hidden, to use a VPN, because online you have many personalities, okay? Because you can always change who you present yourself to be. However, in real life, you only have one real identity and you cannot change that. Which means that as soon as we figure out that real identity, we are creating a situation where the harasser online no longer has something to hide behind, because everybody knows who they are. Second point of rebuttal, they tell us these are very subjective matters. Well, we disagree because most of the harassment, most of the cases of this are very clearly things that are illegal and that we would not want to happen, like sexual harassment that OJ has already talked about, death threats online, and etc. Third, they tell us it can get to haters and they can get harassed as well, and that's because of that it's not proportional. So to that we say harassers are the haters in the first place. If they get a punishment that is equivalent to what they were doing in the first place, then that is by definition proportional to what they were doing, and they get a proportionate punishment to what they were doing before. Okay. I'll move on to my point right now. But I'm going to present 2 points, and it's going to be a direct clash with OO, and it's going to be, first of all, why we have no other ways to deal with harassment online right now. And the second point is going to be why we're actually dealing with this situation in the best way that we can. So first point, why we have no other ways to deal with this. I've talked about this a little bit in my rebuttal, but let's explain. Like I said, it's very easy for people online. It's actually, in fact, by default, you stay anonymous forever, okay? Because online, you have countless ways to screen your identity from other people. You can have lots of accounts, lots of users. You can have very different nicknames that are not your actual real name. You can change your nickname and countless amount of times, and you can use different devices in order to harass people. Now, because of this, we create a situation in which you actually have no fear to harass someone, because in real life people know who you are, and they know that if they see you bully someone physically, that you're going to get a lot of hate for it, and you're going to deteriorate from doing that because people do not like that. However, when no one actually knows who you are, the people who harass other people online always know that they can stay hidden, and that's why they have they have this no deteriorate, and there are no real consequences to their actions. This is important because, like I said right now, every alternative that OO has given us is actually not working, because the person can always come back under a different name. Now, I'm going to move on to my second point right now, which is actually going to explain why this eliminates that situation and why we're actually dealing with this problem in the best way. Now, why is this our only way to deal with harassment? Because it is actually tackling the problem from its core, from its root, okay? Why is that? Because it creates a situation where the harasser has a lot of risk to his harassment right now. Because if the harasser knows that their name and identity can potentially be exposed to the real world, after that, everybody will know who they are, and it basically eliminates all of the other possible ways that they might have in order to come back to that community after they've been banned for the first time. Because if everyone knows who I am, they can keep finding it out, and they can keep now censoring me and basically keeping me out of that. Just a second, I'll take it just a second. And they can basically keep me out of that community for as long as possible, as long as I continue harassing. And I also get an actual reputation, because people now know who is this, and they actually don't hide behind the screen, and basically they get repercussions for their actions. I will now take you over.
Thank you, sir. So far, CG does not argue that government creates a huge risk of being revealed for potentially all the users, leading to them deserting the communities. Could you please explain why individual interests are more important than individuals of potentially all the users of the communities?
Okay, so basically two points to argue with. First of all, what we're creating right now is a, okay. I will tackle this with a point of external bullet. Basically, what we're saying is that we do give justice to people, because in the internet, the government doesn't actually do anything online, because they, first of all, don't see the severity of these actions, and they have no means to have people in the internet policemen. Online, every man is out for themselves, and they have to take matters to their own hands if they are getting harassed, and there is no actual mechanism, like I've already explained, there's no mechanism to deal with this. However, we also think that it is extremely unlikely for people to go out of their way and find identities of people that are not harassing anyone, because it doesn't happen today. And the reason for that is people only go out of their way to expose someone's identity when actual harm has been done. And for that reason, we think that it is the only way to deal with online harassment, as there are no other ways to deal with it right now. And we beg you to propose. Thank you very much.
I thank the member of government, and I will continue with member of the opposition.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay.
First, about the alternative, let's talk about it. The police does not have a mechanism to punish people online. Oh, moreover, that we do see that there are no means, because you are behind a screen. So you can just open another account. You can just delete the messages. You have so many ways to just go without the police noticing you. The police isn't online. So we think you really don't have other means to actually punish this person. But this person, it is much easier for him, as Thomas says, it's much easier for him to harass someone when his name isn't revealed, when his picture isn't revealed, when he's behind the screen and he can type whatever he thinks without someone without seeing the reply. And this is what Tomer tells us. That means that someone can harass much more and much more extremely other people online. It is much more easier for you, and this is why we think that this punishment is proportional, because the legitimacy of this punishment enables you to reveal his identity, so he won't be behind a screen anymore. And in this way, someone can't harass so easily as he did before. And then when you talk about the authority to punish this person, so this person, because we have no alternative, we have no other means, because we can't find those people online, and we can regulate what they say and what and how they harass, unless we reveal their identity and they actually understand and see the consequences to what they do. And so then we need to weigh between someone who is harassed, who is being hurt, and as Tomer tells us, it can have really hard impacts on his feelings and on his everyday life, because someone can write messages to you, and someone can do shaming online to you and harass you in ways that will affect you, but you have no one to get help from, because no one can actually find this person and stop him, because he is behind the screen. So then we have those people who are harassed and we have no way to help them, and the people who harass and know the consequences and know that their identity can be revealed. And in this way, we say we care more about those who are being harassed and not those who are doing something that isn't okay. And if it wasn't online, if it was just an harassment, so we would say it's against the law. We would say that sexual harassment, when it's not online, is against the law. So here it's the same. We think it's morally wrong, and therefore we don't think we need to protect those people. And that's relevant to what OO says as well, because OO tells us that what if we will reveal the identity of those harassers, and then we think we just that if we need to protect them or protect those who are being harassed, those who are being harassed are way more important to us. About what OO says that about no, thank you. About what OO says about like special communities and contexts. So if someone harasses you in an LGBT community and you're also in this community, so you'll probably understand the context. Even if, so if he really harassed you in a way that's, so you will understand the context exactly as he does, because when you talk about those close communities. Okay, so even if, so OO tells us, not now, thank you. OO tells us what if they bully people in the streets and etc. So we think that that we have, like, when someone really does something against the law in real life, we can regulate that and we can punish him for that. And in addition to that, when we have a post, when you post the identity of someone, when everyone sees it, when everyone comments to it or like this post, we can actually see what's going on there. We can regulate it and like do and use means if something, no, not now, if something wrong is being done. But when it's a private message from an unknown account, then we have no way to take care of it. Okay, yes,
Thank you. Your case is you isolate harassers from the communities, but the whole government says that there is no big deal to create another anonymous account and continue harassing. Also, please explain why the decision to reveal identity cannot be given to moderators.
Okay, thank you. So we think first, yes, you can open accounts, etc. But this thing will really hurt you when everyone knows your identity, when everyone can reply to you. And now you're not protected behind a screen because people now know really who you are. And then this is a way more effective punishment. And why do we think that those who are harassed need to post it? Because in the end, they are those who will do it immediately instead of going to the police, showing them the messages. Some message will be deleted. Like all those things, as we say, if the police can't follow this, so they can't really help in that process. Now, and this is also relevant to what CEO says about the names and why not just revealing it with the name. So we think that the name actually takes the protection from those people that they are behind the screen, and this is an effective punishment. Now, OG tells us about like a safer society for everyone, etc. But we think that it is much that first logically you need to understand why really there are no alternatives, and we say why it is important. We do give reasons for why it affects everyone's lives, but we say more to what OG says, that we say that it is legitimate because it is proportional, because in this way you can do it even if someone hides behind the screen. You can do it, and this is a proportional and legitimate and the only optional punishment. Thank you.
I thank the government whip, and now we continue with the last speech of this debate. I'd like to invite the whip speaker for the opposition.
Give me a second. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. You're not that loud, but you are audible.
Thank you for the speech. That in case of CG, they said that somebody harassed you on Instagram or another social media platforms by fake accounts, and you don't know, even if you don't know, you can contact to the police, and the police can open this case, and they will look for the harasser online or offline. It doesn't matter, and somebody who knows the harasser can give the information to the police, and the police can punish these harassers. Why? So today, government did not prove that their personal identity. Why we need their personal identity? Why we need personal identity of harassments to reveal online that that's not that's why that's what government cannot prove in these debates. We can say that everybody who knows the personal information, personal data about harasser can give to the police, and there is no there is no problem. What they say? They say that what government tell us? Government said that they can open new account, but two things for that. If we punish one harasser, we can punish him or her, and another people can see it, and they will not do any harass for people because they see that police can arrest them as harassers. So there's alternatives. This is alternative. There's alternative of opposition today. What about authority of third people that know personal identity of this harasser? We can say in this debate that they have no morally and uh, even anyway they have no authority to give this information online because they're not judged and they're not they have no authority to this. Yes, OG.
If someone is about to murder someone, it's not just legitimate, but my duty to prevent it, even killing them to do so. We show that revealing the identity helps people protect themselves and deters harassers, preventing future harassments for the mere price of anonymity, which is not even a right.
I agree with this statement, but in this case, the difference between this, in case of murder, you can beat murderer, or you can call the police. In this way, we tell you that you can give information about harass to the police or to the people who harassed it. There's no problem, and there is no uh, there is no uh, there is no equity for this example. The the second thing that we tell you that harasser harasser it's not unproportional punishment for the harasser because we cannot control the relations between online society. So people can discriminate these harassers online or offline. So there is no reason to reveal the personal identity of harasser. If you report your case to police, there is also an opportunity to punish the harassers. That that all the benefit of OG explained will be achieved on our side too. Why? Because you can arrest harasser with this information, and like in case of other crimes, you can get these benefits. Yes, OG.
Yes. So in many cases, online harassment happens on big scales. The police usually dismisses these cases and does not handle them. Not all types of harassments are illegal. It is still my right to protect myself against them. And note that right to anonymity is not actually a right in the Constitution.
Rok, what time is it?
You still have 1
You-
minute.
Yeah.
So the PI of OG say that police did not look for these harassers in any country, but it's not true that you can if you can always get to the police and give you can tell them that you harassed it and to find these harassers. So thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone for this debate. I'll take 10 minutes or so, and then I'll come back to you with the feedback and the call.
I mean, I can tell her if we're in a rush, so I can just tell her what you said. But if we can wait, so obviously that's...
I'm not in such a rush. If anyone else is, we can begin. I'm fine with waiting here. Okay, so are you all ready? Can we begin?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you again for the debate. I really enjoyed it. I think it was a pretty good one. So first, I would like to give you just 2 points of general feedback. After that, I will give you the call, and then we'll go chronologically through the debate, and I will explain the call. Okay. So one, I think that, and this is not such a big issue, but I don't know where exactly to fit it, so I'm putting it in the beginning. I think that some of you use arguments that are consequentialist in nature, but they only work if everyone in the society starts doing what you think they should be doing. So like God has arguments, if everyone reveals when someone is doing those bad things, when they reveal their identity, it's going to lead to a safer space. And the opposition makes arguments like that, you know, they'll turn around how if everyone starts doing that, it's going to lead to less participation and things like that. So I think that what is important to notice here is that this debate doesn't actually allow you to do that, right? Because you're only discussing whether an individual has the legitimacy to commit such an action, and it doesn't state that everyone will start doing it. So probably you're going to have both actions existing in both worlds, and we're only discussing which one is more legitimate. And of course, there is still some value to those arguments, but because you can say that by doing that action, you are contributing to such an outcome, but the impact of that is like very, very marginal, right? Since one individual can only commit that much. And secondly, I think that it would be nice if we had some kind of a matrix under which I would be able to decide what is, like, when is basically vigilantism legitimate, right? Well, I think that you came closest when you discussed how when is self-defense legitimate, and you did put some criteria, but it was all scattered around in different arguments. So when you're talking about legitimacy, you said it might be legitimate if there's no alternative. It might be legitimate if the punishment is then being done. It might be legitimate if there's, you know, some kind of a retribution for the victim. And I think that it could be really nice for me as a judge to have all these criteria in one place, preferably in the beginning, like on the Prime Minister's speech, or if it's not heard from the leader of the opposition, so I would know what's the criteria for the legitimacy itself. Okay, so I think that this is something general that applies to everyone. Now I will give you the call, then the explanation. I gave the first to opening opposition, the second to opening government, the third to closing government, and the fourth, unfortunately, to closing opposition. So let's go chronologically through the debate. What we hear from opening government is, I think, two major ideas. The first one is this principle that if people get hurt or when their autonomy is being attacked, they have some kind of a right to seek punishment. And I think that OG acknowledges already that alternatives do exist, right? Such as, you know, police or something else, but they do say that in many cases, people don't report those, or there's a lack of interest from the authorities to prosecute them. I think definitely there could be more explanation like why this happens often, and then framing why is it likely that only in situations when this happen, this like basically that outcome that government wants to pursue is going to be pursued. I think that with that you would gain a lot of ground against closing government. But I think that the principle is there. It is established that, you know, if you're being hurt, you have a right to seek retribution. Sometimes alternatives are not working. How does the opening opposition respond to that? I think that the vast majority of argumentation we hear from OO goes in the direction that alternatives, for the most part, are vastly superior, and there are two reasons for that. One, they're likely to be more objective. And I think that here we hear really a lot of analysis why individuals who seek to find justice in such a way are likely to be, not to have the soundness of judgments, because we're talking about sensitive matters, we're talking about different cultures, geographies, it's weird with online communication. So I would appreciate some extra analysis why an overriding body would be better in being more objective, because it is kind of intuitive, but still more would be better. So this is one aspect that OO brings. And secondly, it is likely that the punishments are going to be more proportional and more fair if an overriding body does it, because you're emotionally invested if you're the victim, and this is a big punishment for someone. Now, I think that this analysis from opening opposition, although you notice that it doesn't really apply to everything OG says, because OG is strongest in cases where individuals don't go to seek police, don't go to the police, or don't report it. And then you say, basically, you don't say it explicitly, but that's what I imagine. You say the alternative is crime not being reported at all, or nothing being done, or, you revealing the identity. But the thing is that how it happened in debate, the teams kind of accepted that the comparative we're having in debate is either go to the police or report it to Facebook or whoever, or reveal the identity. And I think that this really worked in the benefit of opening opposition, because then I'm waiting, where is the more objectivity or subjectivity, and where is the likely the punishment to be more proportional. And I think that since no one on government kind of doesn't directly engage with those metrics that much, I think we hear some attempts from closing government when it comes to proportionality, but I think that the analysis we hear from OO on this matter is vastly superior, and there are very concrete harms they bring from that on opening opposition, right? What's the harm of not being objective and not being proportional? Mainly two, that the punishment itself is unfair, and secondly, that some people who are basically innocent are going to get hurt, and there is a very good analysis on what is this harm if your identity gets revealed, how you might be bullied, some other harm is going to be done to you. And although I agree with OG when they say that privacy is not a right per se, but fine, but OO tells me what are the concrete harms that happens when this privacy gets violated. So that's the first part of top half. But the second part of OG's case is that another very important argument is that it is very important that we reveal people's identity, because in that way we protect friends around us and other people who might be hurt in the future. I'm really sad that I don't hear a direct reply to that argument in the DLO, but we do hear some two very efficient responses in a PY coming from opening opposition, saying that and also analysis on government's bench kind of confirms that, saying that even in the cases where you reveal the identity, it's still likely that sometime in the future you might be able to hide it through VPNs or whatever. And secondly, why cannot some other body do that? Reveal the identity, meaning that why doesn't Facebook take the decision whose identity to reveal? Why does it have to be an individual? I don't think that this is the strongest response, since that if you stand for Facebook revealing identity, there are also harms that are the same harms as OO is contributing to OG. But I mean that in the end of the day, I still assume that OG proves that to a certain degree, it's going to be easier in making sure that everyone knows who those perpetrators are. Probably I think that the impact of that is very limited, because it probably only works in local environments when people know people, and if you say that that friend did something, that person did something bad to me, you have to know that person in real life, and probably the positive impacts of OG do not extend to the internet as a whole, since as you're proving on the entire government bench, individuals can still hide their identity in the future, and in that way they don't you don't have the positive impacts that OG tries to explain about. So in the end, when the top half is done, I think that I do buy that probably more individuals are going to get punished on government work, because in certain cases you don't go to the police or whatever, but I'm really unsure what that number is, because there's really like lack of framing that would set the debate in this direction. But also what I get from OO, and which I buy, is that probably more people who are innocent, who didn't harass other people, are going to get punished, and secondly, the people who have harassed it's more likely that their punishment is going to be unproportionate. And I think that kind of impacts of both teams are to a certain degree mitigated with this thing because on the internet, like in the future, you can still always to a certain degree hide your identity and then evade all the harms you're talking about. But I think that it applies to a certain degree less to the opposition's highest ground when they talk about innocent people getting punished for that, who just want to be there and not necessarily are in the internet to harass in the future and therefore won't do all the things that the government supposed them to do. So in the end, the harms I have from opening opposition are greater than the ones from government, since I think they prove that innocent people are going to get punished and the punishment for those harassers is going to be unproportional, and these are harms by itself. And I'm not convinced by OG and I kind of agree, like, yeah, if you prove that you are legitimate to do something and that this leads to positive outcomes, this is legitimate. But at the point when opening opposition shows us that alternatives are way better, and there are less harms there, then I'm not more likely to buy opposition's analysis. Why those that it's fine for opposition to argue that if you have a better alternative, it's not legitimate for you to go for the worst alternative. So on this matrix, opening opposition beats opening government. Is everything clear at this point on that clash? Okay, so now let's bring closing government to this debate. I think that the contribution of CG is fairly important, and I think that I credit you the most for giving me a lot of explanation and clear analysis on why really is there no alternatives in the terms that individuals can always find ways to be hidden in the future, and in that way you describe more the uniqueness of the motion in terms of like why revealing the identity is so much different. I do think, however, that there are two major problems with that extension, which put you below both OO and OG. Firstly, when it comes to OO, I still think that the answer that you get from OO in that POI, and also in the way you make a case, it proves that your case, it's to a certain degree marginal, meaning that even if you reveal the identity, like if you're this really bad person, the ones who you are fighting against, right, who you want to do most to stop, if you reveal their identity, still in the future, they might hide it and find other ways to stay hidden or whatever. And in such way, you don't get the positive impacts that you're getting, right? And I think that you're not answering to OO's analysis of alternatives when they tell you it's going to be subjective, it's going to be disproportional. And I'm really sad because you recognize that this is some kind of a clash, and you say that you're going to go for it, but you never give me that much analysis, right? When it comes to the proportionality, you say, yeah, that it's likely that people in the same context, for example, in LGBT forum, are going to know what's the context, and then only if they have been harassed to such a degree, they're going to go for this revealing the identity MAC. But I'm still like the sheer amount and depth of analysis we hear from OO, how there are many different factors that impact your rationale and could make you go for unproportional solutions is what convinced me from the opening opposition. So mainly like not enough engagement with OO. But what puts you below OG is I think that even though your mechanism is more clear and it is much more, I have a much clearer perception on how this is going to look like so how are you going to what's so unique, how you're going to hide the identity and all that. I think that all your positive impacts are entirely contingent on, it's very similar to OG, what they talk about in the last minute of the Prime Minister's speech, when they say that you as an individual have a responsibility to protect other people by revealing that by revealing the identity of that individual, right? So if you give me just, but you on CG, you gave me a bit more analysis on that, on why you can evade all the other, you know, well, if you're blocked, you can create a new profile and other things. You just mechanized the OG's case a bit more. But I don't think in the end it was enough to put you above opening government, because I think to a large degree it was kind of intuitive already from when Top Hub was finished, that this is what is likely what's going to happen, right? I already bought the positive impact on, you know, you have to reveal who the harassers are from opening government. So when you give me on CG additional analysis mechanisms on why this is going to happen, it's not enough to put you above OG, and also especially because then the impacts are like all exactly the same what OG talks about, right? That we have to stop the perpetrators in the future and all those other negative things. So that's why you come below OG and like by extension also to OO. Now to bring in closing opposition to this debate, I think that we hear a lot of things from closing opposition, but I would say that many of them are very, very derivative from what we already hear on opening opposition. So first we hear that there are different alternatives, right? And that it is not always necessary to reveal the names in order to fight, you know, to punish those people and to fight it. I don't think that this is entirely, it's not really engaging with OG's strongest point, but secondly, I think it's something we already hear from opening opposition to a large degree. We hear this addition from CO that there is going to be huge pressure for the justice system to do more about it if you know, if you decide to go with the police way and all those things. But the issue of this analysis is, of course, that you can't really say that everyone is going to do that and then the positive impacts are going to happen, but you need to debate it in like how it is right now in the status quo. So I don't think that it's that much better than the analysis on alternative we hear from OO, the one where they basically list them, say why the police are better, why Facebook and Twitter might be better. But the major part of your extension comes in a bit later when you talk about how individuals' authority to seek retribution and to punish others has already been transferred to the government, to the state, and therefore this this principle of self-defense does not exist. Now, I have a few issues. I have quite a few issues with this argument, like namely that first of all, you probably never prove it that it works for like for everyone for all the cases, right? Because even if you use intuition bombs that in areas with the high crime rates, we still don't allow individuals to take the law into their own hands. We still allow them to defend themselves when they're being personally attacked, right? And I think that then also the logic coming from government that if those individuals have been attacked, they probably have some right to be defended. But secondly, most importantly, I don't really think that your explanation why it is so important that, you know, because the authority has been transferred to the government, it is necessary then that the government is the one, or, you know, the government or some larger community is the ones that does the punishment, does everything else, because all the explanation why is this likely to be the case is already there from opening opposition, right? And you already mentioned that when you say impact, because it's likely to be unproportional, it's likely to be subjective. So basically for your big principle on how the authority has already been transferred to the government, which is not that well explained, why is it this good? Like your explanation for why is this a good thing that authority has been transferred to the government? It's not coming from you, but it's coming from opening opposition. So I really can't claim that you're beating. I can't really credit you enough to say that you're beating opening opposition, since they prove all the things that your case stands on. And in addition, I don't think that you're responsive enough to any of the government teams to take it over them. I think that this is all when it comes to the justification for the call. Is everything clear to everyone? If there are any questions, you feel free to ask. You can also approach me later. You can find me either on Telegram or Facebook Messenger, and I can give you individual extra feedback if you have any questions.
I have a question. So if like an extension that is done properly, that says like OG doesn't show us why there are no alternatives, and we show why, like, and we show this part, can this be an extension that causes to that we won't be below OG? Like the idea of the case.
Yeah, I understand. I think that in a hypothetical case, if I, as a judge, really would be thinking that OG makes like no links on how they're going to get to the impacts. But I think that in this particular case, it was very intuitive to me, like how are you going to get to the impacts? Okay, so you reveal the identity, people knows who that person are, and in that way you protect your friends. So I think that in general, in abstract, I think this is a fair way to have an extension, right? To mechanize how the OG's case. But in this particular case, I don't think that your mechanization was giving that much to the debate, since already it was to a certain degree intuitive that what OG says is going to happen. So I did give you some credit for it. Like that's why you got first, but not enough for you to come above OG.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So if there's not okay. Right. So thanks for the debate. Hope to see you in Kazakhstan. So yeah. Bye.
Thank you.